Let's get started on our notes. If you see the light blue circled problems, those are actually going to be your problems that you're going to take to math workshop or you're going to work on before math workshop. So you're going to take the completed problems, answers, and take them there. Okay, so let's get started. I am going to start placing these numbers on number lines. Now you might notice that these are kind of fancy looking numbers. They don't look like the regular numbers that go on number lines like we're used to, not even decimals. What we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to turn these into decimals in order to find out where they go on our number line. You'll notice I'm not gonna work with any negative numbers on this just to kind of keep us in line of what we gotta do, okay? So let's start with the square root of 3, but for a little, just so we are clear with this calculator, the square root button is right above here. It is in gray. It's right above this x squared, which is the reason is because the square root and the x squared are opposite of each other. If I press the gray button, control, and then the x squared button, it pops up with the square root button. So I can type any number I want to in there. I'm gonna put 3. It gives me 1.73205. So we read that 1.73205. We do not read that any other way, like 1.732, 1.73205. We don't do that. We read numbers after decimals just like plain old numbers, okay? So first of all, if I were looking for 1.73252, oh, that's a lot of numbers, 1.73205. That is a lot of numbers. It might help me if I just kind of round, look at the first set of numbers. So 1.7, I am looking for something in between 1 and 2, and there is my dot. You'll notice that it's not in the very middle. It's more towards the 2 because 1.7 is pretty close to the 2. I'm going to put 1.7. For this exercise, only the first set, I'm going to round to 1 decimal place, just so I can practice rounding. This number here is how I would know how to round or estimate my numbers. The 3 is not big enough to make this 7 jump up to an 8, so it stays 1.7. All right, let's keep going, and I'm gonna keep rounding. So the square root of 20, I do control x squared, pops up the square root button, 20, just like that. I get 4.47214, so I'm gonna write that real quick, 4.47214. If I was just trying to find maybe 1 decimal place for now. Sometimes if numbers are real close together, you might need 2 decimal places or sometimes even 3. However, for now, I'm just gonna go with the 1 decimal place right here. I look at this number. This number is going to have me jump up, just to jump this number up 1. 7 is too big, it's above 5, so 4.5 is what 4 is gonna change into. 4.5 is right here, right in between 4 and 5. So I write 4.5. Okay, the square root of 27, let's do the square root of 27, 5.196. So I'm gonna just write over here, kind of help myself out, 5.19615. If I'm going to round that number, this one will definitely make this jump up. So I have 5.2. 5.2 is located right after the 5, right in between 5 and 6, but really, honestly, right after 5. Remember, we're not in the middle where 5.5 would be. We're pretty close to just plain old 5. 5.2. All right, let's look at this interesting little character right here. This is called the pi symbol. The pi symbol tells us, it helps us with circles. However, right now we're just working with the number. Nice thing about this is we actually have a pi button on our calculator. We don't have to memorize it for now. Pi button is right here. You can press the pi symbol, press enter, and it actually gives you the number for pi, 3.14159. If I'm looking at that very first decimal spot, the 4 rounds that up to 2, so 3.2. I'm looking at something right past the 3.1 or 3 point something area, which would be right here. So I'm gonna write 3.1, well, I'll just go ahead and write 3.14. All right, and then the last one, the square root of 50. 7.07. If I am going to start rounding, just kind of like I said I was going to, just for practice, if I'm rounding that first decimal spot, I look at the one next to it. It is big enough to make that number jump, so I am going to be technically looking for 7.1. 7.1 is found right after the 7. I'm going to write 7.1 here. And you have just 1 left. Now, the nice thing is you know where it goes. However, you got to figure out what the decimal spot. In here, I need you to write the decimal using your calculator. Let's move on. This number line does not have boxes for us. It has the numbers though, so that's a step, that's a plus. We don't have negatives to work with still, so we're only working with positive numbers. Let's do the square root of 5. Control x squared, I get square root, put 5 inside, I get 2.23607. This number is going to be in between 2 and 3. So first of all, set your gaze upon 2 and in the middle of 2 and 3. It is not going to be directly in the middle because it is not 2.5. It's a little bit less than that. So I'm just going to go ahead and make my dot right there. It does not have to be perfect for this. It is just an approximation. That is what we are doing. Okay, the next one, 2 pi. So we're going to type 2, and then we're going to type the pi symbol exactly like we see it, 2 pi. Just like I see it here, and I'm going to press enter. What it does is it actually takes 2 and multiplies it times pi. And then we get 6.28319. So 6 point something. I'm going to look in between 6 and 7 here. And I have 6.28, which means I'm a little bit closer to the 6. I'm not quite 6.5 yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a little decimal or a little dot right here and say that that is 2 pi. And the last one is 70. So, or the square root of 70. Let's do the square root. Square root of 70 is 8.36 repeating. So 8.3. By the way, if you ever have a repeating decimal, it will look like this with a line above it. I don't know if you remember, just so you know. All right, 8.36 repeating. So let's look in between 8 and 9 and put a decimal right about here. Not quite 8.5 also. All right, so I am going to put the square root of 12 because that was the original number. That is what we normally do. Instead of actually writing the decimal, we write the original number that we were finding. All right, let's move down to the last set of examples. Remember, the ones in the circle that I circled are the ones that you do on your own, and you will have 6 numbers placed on this number line, and I will be checking for these 3. All right, let's do these. First of all, there are no tick marks here. There's nothing. So we have to create it ourselves. Remember that the further you go this way, the bigger numbers, the further you go that way, the smaller numbers. We are not working with negative numbers, I see again. So we might just do the exact same thing. Start with 0 and work our way up to 15. All right, so I'm gonna create that really quick. All right, so you can take some time to get that written on your paper. However, I just went ahead and wrote it. Pause the video if you need to. All right, square root of 2. Let's do that. Square root of 2 is 1.41. It will go right. Oh, actually, and this is 1.4, which is actually pretty close to 1.5. So I'm going to kind of try my best to get this in the middle-ish of 1 and 2. Kind of like where we're almost doing 1.5. So I'm going to just draw an arrow and say that this was the square root of 2. Let's do the next one, square root of 110. Oops. Oh, goodness gracious. 110. The answer is 10.48. So if I were rounding, they would be kind of close to 10.5. However, I do know I'm going to go to in between the 10 and 11 and put a little decimal here. And I'm going to draw an arrow and write. It doesn't really matter if you draw your arrow on the top or bottom. It's just telling me where what the dot represented, what number the dot represented. I do need this. I don't need you just drawing dots on your number line. Otherwise, I could draw dots wherever I felt like it. Actually, write the number that you're representing by that dot underneath it, okay? And then last one, the square root of 221. That is 14.86. So 14.8 is in between 14 and 15. It's actually pretty big of a decimal. It's pretty close to 15. So I'm going to put the dot right about there. Remember, it does not have to be perfect, but we're getting close. And I'm going to write the square root of 221. All right, you have these 3 to do on your own, and you do have a trickster question with a pi button or with a pi in it, 3 pi. Remember, there's the button for pi whenever you need that. All right.